Imam al-Hussein has been mourned for thousands of years before 62 AH, when the armies of Umar Sa'd and Ibn Ziyad, under the orders of Yazid, killed the Imam along with his family and companions. The Prophet himself, along with Imam Ali and Imam al-Hassan, are reported on numerous occasions by historians of all denominations to have foretold of this divine event, a sacrifice that not only saved Islam but inspired countless generations with the principles of love, honor and sacrifice. When recounting the history of Karbala, the story will remain incomplete without mentioning one man in particular. While the other family members and companions had a status above comprehension, one individual surely stands apart.
Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, Salamullahi alayhi, in regards to his lineage and his background, his mother is known as al-Banin, her name being Fatima bint Hizam al-Amiriya from the tribe of Bani Kilab. And historians have mentioned that Amir al-Mu'mineen approached his brother Aqil ibn Abi Talib, and he says to him, "My brother Aqil, I want you to find for me a woman from a tribe that is well known for their valor and for their courage, for their bravery, for their swordsmanship." And this in itself shows us that even before Amir al-Mu'mineen engaged in the marriage with Sayyida al-Banin, he had a clear vision in his mind. He had a goal that from this marriage he would like for a child or a son to be conceived who would be an aid for his son Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam on the Day of Judgment. Noble traits such as generosity, traits such as bravery, it is established even within psychology now in the 21st century that traits such as these are inherited and have a big role to play once they are passed from the parent onto the child. From this divine institution of marriage, Amir al-Mu'mineen marries al-Banin, and years after, or a short while after their marriage, they are blessed with the birth of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. Together with this, Abu al-Fadl had other siblings who are known as Abdullah, Ja'far, Uthman. And together with Abu al-Fadl, 4 of them, and this is why she was known as al-Banin, the mother of the sons, the one who had given birth to 4 sons. And all 3 siblings for Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas gave their life in defense of Sayyid al-Shuhada in Ashura in the land of Karbala.
All members of the Bani Hashim had reputations in the battlefield. They were known for their bravery and superior ability. However, Abbas from a young age stood out.
There came a time during this battle that no one was willing to face Amir al-Mu'mineen on a one-to-one challenge, on a duel, as was the customary norm. This was the norm during the battle at that time, that before there was a full-fledged battle, the best warriors from every side would come into a duel. For when nobody was willing to face Amir al-Mu'mineen, at one point of this war, Amir al-Mu'mineen orders or commands his son Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, who was at the age of 17 during the time of the Battle of Siffin, to go out and to participate within this battle. For at this point, Abu al-Fadl had covered his face with a niqab, or the end part of his amama, such that his identity is concealed. He goes into the battlefield and he asks for a challenge, and in particular the challenge was directed towards one of the people from the army of Muawiyah known as Abu Shu'tha. Abu Shu'tha, the people within Jahiliyyah used to say, was equivalent to 1,000 horsemen. So when Abu al-Fadl came and put forward his challenge, he said, "This is a young man who seems to be young and somebody who we don't know. I am a person who is equivalent to 1,000 horsemen and will not fight with anyone who is not equal to me in rank." So he sent out his son. Historians have mentioned he had 7 sons. Abu al-Fadl in this duel or in these challenges was able to kill all 7 of his sons, overcome them and send them to Jahannam wa bi'sal masir. 7 of them. Once the seventh child was killed, Abu Shu'tha was filled with anger and he rode into the battlefield. The historians mention this Abu Shu'tha, who was the equivalent of 1,000 horsemen. Abu al-Fadl was able to gain victory over him with a single strike of his sword on his head.
While Abbas's reputation in the battlefield began to precede him, historians also highlight the fact that he was an alim, a faqih, that was referred to for his knowledge.
Then comes the time where Ibn Muljim al-La'in struck Amir al-Mu'mineen in Masjid al-Kufa while he was in a state of salat. Amir al-Mu'mineen cries out, "Fustu wa Rabbil Kaaba." The narrations mention that when Ibn Muljim had struck Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, Sayyid al-Shuhada and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas came rushing towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. They bandaged his wound around his head, they placed a bandage around his head, and they carried him towards his house from the mosque. And Abu al-Fadl was by the side of his father throughout this time. And traditions mention that as Amir al-Mu'mineen was giving his final wasiyah to all his children, he designated Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba as the Imam to succeed him as per the divine command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which he had received through Rasulullah. And similarly after that, he designated Imam al-Hussein to be the Imam after Imam al-Mujtaba. He commanded his entire family to not dispute and to not challenge Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein in any issue, because they are from the children of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha. And then in particular, Amir al-Mu'mineen calls Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas to his side, and he says to him, "My son Abbas, you are going to be my representative, and you are going to defend the son of Fatima." Look at what Amir al-Mu'mineen says. Sayyid al-Shuhada is also his son. But over here, he points out to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas that the reason for your existence is the day of Ashura. And he says to him, your stance and your presence in Karbala is on my behalf. And you see that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas holds this banner, and he represents his father in Karbala to the highest level of courage and the highest level of bravery. He says to him as well that when you gain control over the Furat, be sure to not to quench your thirst while the son of Fatima is thirsty. And the last thing Amir al-Mu'mineen did for Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas is that he kissed him on his right shoulder and on his left shoulder.
As the years passed, Abbas remained at the behest of both Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein. From all the Bani Hashim, he had built a reputation of loyalty and sincerity, particularly to Imam al-Hussein.
During this traveling from Medina to Mecca, you will find that he traveled with his entire family. From this family, there were males, there were youth, there were women, and there were children. Handling the part of the caravan or the hamla which had to deal with the women was the sole responsibility of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. This responsibility of ensuring the safety of the women, to ensure that he attends to every need for these pious women from the family of Ahlul Bayt, was the sole responsibility of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. That is why you find that on the day of after Ashura, that when Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam is leaving Karbala and is taken as a prison from Karbala to Kufa, and she is made to mount onto a camel with her hands tied, she looks back at the body of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and she says to him, "Oh brother Abbas, who is there to help me mount this camel? When I was leaving Medina, the women would not mount onto the camels except that Abu al-Fadl would help them." For this responsibility of the protection of the women and the children was the sole responsibility of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas.
When the camp of Imam al-Hussein had halted in the plains of Nainawa, things in Karbala began to take shape.
Every day the army was increasing in its numbers. Reinforcement after reinforcement was sent to capture and to engage in battle with Imam al-Hussein and his companions. And on the day that Shimr al-La'in, Shimr ibn Diljoshan, comes with his contingency and reaches Karbala, he comes towards the middle of the plains and he calls out for Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And he says to him, "Where is Abbas and his brothers?" For Abu al-Fadl refuses to respond to his call. But Imam al-Hussein goes to him and he says, "Reply back to them, even though he is a fasiq, even though he is deviant and devilish in his ways, respond back to him." Abu al-Fadl doesn't ask any questions and he goes into the battlefield, into the middle of the plains. And he says to Shimr, Shimr looks at him and he says to him, "Ya bani ukhti," he says, "You are from the same tribe or the same family as my sister." He says to them that, "Why do you kill yourself with Imam Hussein? Why are you putting yourself or making yourself, leading yourself to be perished? I am giving you amnesty and leave Hussein, and I give you this amnesty. You shall be safe." Abu al-Fadl Abbas looks at him and he says to him, "La'anak Allah wa la'ana amanak atu'minuna wa ibn Rasulillah la amana lahu." May the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be on you and curse on this amnesty which you are trying to give me. How is it that you give me protection and amnesty, and yet the grandchildren or the grandson of Rasulullah, there is no amnesty for him? How do you expect me to come into the obedience and pledge allegiance to those cursed people, Lu'ana, the plural of La'in, and the children of those who are cursed? And it is also important to point over here that when Shimr provided this amnesty towards Abu al-Fadl, it wasn't out of the goodness of his heart. These were men who possessed no goodness to start with. It wasn't because he was emotional or he had some soft spot for his family. Abadan. This amnesty which was given to him, he uses this excuse, "Ya bani ukhti," "O children of my sister," or "O my cousins." This was an excuse, and the real reason for him granting them amnesty was because of their cowardice. They knew the strength of Abu al-Fadl. They knew that he constituted an important and a crucial part of Imam al-Hussein's army. He thought that if he was able to grant him amnesty, they would weaken the army of Imam al-Hussein and it would be easier to capture or to kill him.
Such was the reputation of Abu Fadl al-Abbas, even with the armies of Ibn Sa'ad in their thousands, that they tried to tempt him away from the battlefield. However, this was never the case. As history records, Abu Fadl was the flag bearer of Imam Hussein's army.
Within the military tactics, the formation of the army within the battlefield is of utmost importance, especially during those times where conventional war was fought either on foot or on horse, and the weapons that were used were that like spears and swords. The formation of the army was absolutely critical and played a large part towards determining the success of the army or the failure of the army. So the formation is absolutely important, in that how do you align and position or divide your army between the horsemen and between the foot soldiers? Where do you place the archers? Where do you place the men who are going to attack with the spears? And where do you place the swordsmen? Within this formation of ranks within the army, there is a central position which is known as the position of the flag bearer. The flag bearer is not only, the title is not given to him only because of its literal meaning, and that the person who holds up the flag which represents the army. The flag in itself, number one, represents the army. It represents what the army stands for. Therefore, when Abu al-Fadl was given the position of flag bearer, in that from within this entire army, formed of horsemen and foot soldiers, swordsmen or archers. There is one person who stands out in terms of his courage and in terms of the message which this flag represents. For from the importance of this position, you are able to understand the position of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, that a Ma'soom Imam who is the Hujjah on earth gives this position to a person like Abu al-Fadl.
Abbas took up the position of the flag bearer and remained central to the army of Imam al-Hussein. It is for this reason historians have said Imam al-Hussein was reluctant to let Abbas go to the battlefield. There are various misconceptions surrounding this issue. The Maqtal records the conversation Abbas had with Imam al-Hussein.
What it says is, now he is bringing forward Abu al-Fadl's insistence to go into the battlefield. He says that over here, once Abu al-Fadl saw that all his family members, all the companions are lying down in front of him slain, and he sees that the Imam has been you can say like cornered. He's been oppressed in that they are not giving him any leeway. And on top of all this, there's the constant weeping and the wailing of the children and the women from thirst. He comes to Imam al-Hussein and he says, قال العباس قد ضاق صدري من هؤلاء المنافقين وأريد أن أخذ ثأري منهم. He says that I cannot bear the stance of these munafiqeen anymore, and I want to avenge for my family members before me. فأمره الحسين أن يطلب الماء للأطفال فذهب العباس إلى القوم ووعدهم وحذرهم غضب الجبار فلم ينفع. So he says to him, I want to go and I want to avenge. The Maqtal doesn't say, or you'll not find within the hadith that Imam al-Hussein refused him. Imam al-Hussein stayed silent on that, and he says to him that if you must go out, then seek water for the children. So the goal of Abu al-Fadl to leave the tent into the enemy ranks, the goal is to fetch water. The goal is not to ensure a military victory over here. However, if by you trying to achieve this goal of attaining water in the middle, if you have to fight, then you have to fight, because it is a barrier towards you achieving the goal. For when Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam leaves the tent, between him and the Furat, there is an army of 4,000 people. You find that within the Maqtal it is narrated that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas roars like a lion, and he charges down the enemy ranks to get towards the Furat, to ensure that he is able to fetch water for the women and for the children within the tent who have been weeping al-Atash for 3 days. He dismantles their rank and he reaches the Furat. As he's in the Furat, he comes off his horse and he lifts the water into his hands. This handful of cold water from Furat, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was also thirsty for the last 3 days. He lifts this water and the entire army is looking at him to see what exactly he is going to do. And in the presence of all these people, Abu al-Fadl, while holding the water in his hands, recites a poem that shows us the depth of his ma'rifah and his aqidah. He says, Ya nafsu ba'da al-Husayni huni وتشربين بارد المعين وبعده لا كنت أن تكوني وهذا الحسين وارد المنون وتشربين بارد المعين لا والله ما هذا من فعال ديني ما هذا من فعال صادق اليقين. He holds the water and he says, O Nafs, talking to himself, O Nafs, what is there to live after Hussein? يا نفس بعد الحسين هوني وبعده لا كنت أن تكوني. Is there any value in life after Imam al-Hussein? He says, this is Hussein who is under siege and you drink water which is cold. Now he's metaphorically telling his nafs but to point a lesson or to show a lesson and to establish his loyalty in front of the ranks of the enemy. And this is why he says, La wallah ma hadha min fi'alu dini. It is not from my religion that I drink my water while my master is thirsty. And from here you see that for Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas there is a concept known as muwasat, in that I feel what my master feels. I will suffer what my master suffers. I can never be in comfort or never enjoy a comfort if that same comfort is not provided to my master. If Sayyid al-Shuhada is thirsty, then I am thirsty. Sayyid al-Shuhada is hungry, I am hungry. Before I quench my thirst, I quench his thirst. The water was in his possession. He could have had the excuse, or he could have said, I drink some to strengthen myself such that I get there. But this thought in itself was unbearable. How can I enjoy the sweetness and the coolness of this water even for a few moments while my master is there thirsty? To prefer his thirst, or to prefer quenching his thirst over quenching my thirst, this was the stance of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And this is a maqam which is extremely difficult to reach. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, Abbas was Abbas because he had this ma'rifah of imam. Today, for me to deny myself something because the imam doesn't have it, or to prefer my imam and to put forward his preference over my preference, is the peak of iman. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas fills the water bag and he mounts his horse and he has his sword in hand, and his entire goal, his sole vision is to ensure that he gets from the Furat back to the tent in order to quench the thirst of the children. This is his target and this is his mission. And between him is an army of 70,000 people. At that time, because you are in a desert which is by the river, there are trees that were growing within the vicinity of the river. So it wasn't an open battlefield at that part next to the Furat. And therefore Abu al-Fadl was making his way through the palm trees. And behind one of the palm trees there was an enemy of God, one of them who had hidden behind the palm tree by the name of Zayd ibn Ruqad. And as Abu al-Fadl was passing through from behind the palm tree, Zayd comes and he strikes the right arm of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, severing it in its entirety. The narration mentions that this arm was severed in its entirety and his right arm fell onto the ground on the plains of Karbala. You would think at this point that his determination wavered, or he was overcome with weakness or with fear. But yet you find over here he recites a poem that shows that by you severing my right arm, you have not weakened me, but rather you have strengthened me and my determination. And he says, Wallahi in kata'tumu yamini, inni uhami abadan an dini, wa an imamin sadiqil yakini, najlun nabi at-tahiril amini. He says, Wallah, qasam, even if you sever my right arm, indeed, inni uhami abadan an dini, I will definitely protect my entire deen. What is my deen? An imam sadiq al-yakini. My deen entails that I protect the imam, the truthful imam of my time, Najlun Nabi Sadiq al-Tahir al-Amini, the grandson of the Holy Prophet, the Amin, trustworthy and the pure. He takes the sword in his left hand, the water bag is round his neck, and he continues to ride on with his determination and with great valor towards the tent. And as he passes through from the palm tree on his right side, one of the enemies by the name of Hakim ibn Tufail severed the left arm of Abu al-Fadl Abbas. And again, the entire arm was severed and fell onto the ground. And now you find he is carrying the water bag with his teeth, and he has no arms. And he recites a poem, and he says over here, Ya nafs la takhsha min al-kuffar wabshiri bi rahmat al-jabbar ma'an nabiy al-sayyid al-mukhtar kad qata'u bi baghyihim yasari fa aslihim ya rab harran nar. It says, O nafs, do not fear from these kuffar, and rather have glad tidings about the mercy of the All-Powerful. And have these glad tidings that you will be with the Holy Prophet. He says, قَدْ قَطَعُوا يَسَارِ قَدْ قَطَعُوا بِبَغْيِهِمْ يَسَارِ. Out of their hatred for me, they've severed my left arm. And then he does a dua on them. He says, فَأَصْلِحِمْ يَا رَبْ حَرِّ النَّارِ. He says, Ya Allah, make them to plunge into the hellfire for what they have done to me. Because by them severing his arms, they have now barred him from reaching this water towards the thirsty children who have no sin. And from here you find that despite him not having his two arms, the army still does not possess an ounce of courage. They are not able to attack him, and they keep on shooting arrows at him from every direction from the distance. There is an arrow that pierces the eye of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, and there is another arrow that pierced the water bag. And as soon as this water bag was pierced, and Abu al-Fadl sees that the water is pouring down onto the sands, and perhaps he is thinking at this point that how will I face the daughters of Imam al-Hussein, who have pinned their entire hope on me to quench their thirst. And at this point, a person from the enemy rank comes, and he strikes Abu al-Fadl with a tent pole at the back of his head. Maktal says, فَضَرَبَهُ اللَّعِينَ بِالْعَمُودِ عَلَى رَأْسِهِ فَفَلَكَ حَامَتُهُ. He struck Abu al-Fadl with a pole at the back of his head, and he says, عَلَيْكَ مِنِّي السَّلَامِ يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ. He sends his final salutations to Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein comes running into the battlefield. The tradition mentions for every 4 steps or every few steps he would take, Imam al-Hussein would fall down onto the field. For every few steps he would take, he would fall back down. And when he looked at Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas lying on the plains of Karbala without arms and with an arrow pierced in his eye, and his skull broken open, he cries out, Al-an inkasarat dhahri. He says, now my back is broken. And he sits by the side of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, and he says to him, my brother, what have these enemies done to you? He puts his head on his lap. Abu al-Fadl looks at him, and after a moment you find that Abu al-Fadl tries to move his head off the lap of Imam al-Hussein. The Imam al-Hussein says to him, my brother, why is it that you remove your head off my lap? And at this point Abu al-Fadl says to him, my master, now I have my head on your lap, but who will be there to put your head on their lap? Tradition mentions فرجع الإمام إلى المخيم منكسرا حزينا باكيا يكفكف دموعه بكمه He goes back to the tents of the women with a heart which is broken, overcome with grief. And the Imam was weeping and wiping his tears with his cuffs. So as he was walking back with his cuffs, the Imam would wipe his tears. How do you break the news to the women and the children that this Abbas, who was your defender, is no more here?